So welcome again. Hopefully you didn't hear the thunder that shook the windows in my house just now. But again, welcome. And so our agenda, like I said, is to go through our introductions and kind of orientation to task. And the ambitious objective or goal really is for us to take a look at a first draft and first thought around the goals of the Montana State Library continuing education and certification program. So that's where we want to head with our agenda today. And with that, also we want to get to know each other a little better. Some of us we might know each other. We've had the pleasure of meeting in person or working together in different ways or in different capacities. So here is the list of our mighty team. And it looks as if we have all of our members on board today. And again, just can't thank you enough for making time and taking time to engage in these discussions and this work. So with that, I'd just like to have a chance for each of us to introduce ourselves. And here's a couple questions. If you'd like to answer those questions, great. If you want to expand on something, feel free to do that as well. But I'm going to ask Pam Henley actually to get us started.
Okay, I will. I'm Pam Henley, consulting librarian with the State Library. I love the "where are you from" question because I could go on for an hour about where I'm from. So many places, but we'll just say the State Library for now. And I live in Bozeman. I wanted to be on this task force with Colette because I had helped her predecessor, Joe Flick, quite a bit with the CE program, have been part of the CE program for a long time. Since I worked at the public library for about 16 years and did go through certification. So that's why I wanted to be on this task force. I like this last question too about what brought you to library work. I think I was just born into it because when I was in grade school and I had my own little collection of Scholastic paperback books that you ordered in school every month, I had a card catalog and checked them out to my friends. If they ever wanted to borrow a book, I said when it was checked out, so I knew who had it. So I think library is just in my DNA.
That is awesome, Pam. Robin, why don't you go ahead?
To get me unmuted. I'm Robin Scribner. I am the Montana State Library Commissioner on the Montana State Board. I am from Geraldine, Montana, and right now I'm a lifelong learner, and that's why I agreed to join the task force. And what brings me to library work, I was a school librarian for 25 years, I believe it was. And I was checking out books, but not my own books, which I should have done. Although I did check out books in my classroom. I was also an elementary teacher at the same time. And I initially, to become part of this task force, I was wondering about continuing ed for librarians, as we had a difficult time when I was librarian finding. I did not even know that the Montana State Library offered continuing ed courses or even information for school librarians also. So that was interesting to find out. But I may be interrupted because I am also babysitting my 4-year-old granddaughter who may come. She's sleeping right now by the grace of God. So I'm hoping that she'll sleep most of the meeting.
That sounds great. David, would you like to share next?
I'm not sure if there's a screen to ask questions, but to follow the other lady's presentation. I'm at the Imagination If Library. I've been a trustee for 1 year. My background is in healthcare, and I grew up on the East Coast, but I've been in Kalispell for the last 31 years. I'm a retired physician. I'm very familiar with CMEs, as we would call them, but I've done those my whole career and had to be recertified for multiple different situations, ATLS, ACLS, CPR, those sorts of things, in addition to general licensing. So it kind of attracted my attention because I was curious in more than just seeing the requirements of how you got there and what other people wanted to achieve with those requirements. So that's why I'm jumped in.
That's awesome. We're actually going to take a look at kind of at our next meeting about comparable requirements for different professions. So I'm glad you brought up the background that you have with other professions, specifically the medical professions. Carmen, go right ahead.
Okay, hi, I'm Carmen Clark. I'm the department head for collection management at the Bozeman Public Library. And where are you from? Is that a question as in Bozeman, or where are you from prior to that? Oh, okay. I could also talk forever and ever, but originally I'm from Germany. I've lived here in Bozeman for the last 22 years. I've worked at this library for 16. Why did I agree to join the task force? So I've been I don't know how you would say that, a member, I mean, I've been certified for, I'm not exactly sure how many years, but so ever since I started working in the library, that was highly encouraged to get a certification. And I'm assuming Colleen would know from when to when. I mean, I am currently certified, obviously, but so I'm a participant. That's the word I was looking for, a participant. And what brought me to library work, sort of like Pam, nobody was surprised when I said I'm going to graduate school for library to get my MLAS. Even my childhood friends, they were like, oh yeah, of course you are. So anyway, I think it was just a, I don't know, natural progression that led me to library work.
I'm hearing some common threads of stories too. Miranda, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Miranda. I'm from the Sydney-Richland County Library. I've been in Richland County my entire life. I joined the task force, same as Carmen. I've been certified, that's 8 years. Just wanted to be a little bit more involved, you know, get involved with the state library a little bit more. And library work just kind of fell into my lap about 8 years ago. I got the job and then realized I really love it.
Kind of addictive. Tina, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Oh, unmute, please.
There we go. I'm Tina Peterson, and I'm at the Harlowton Public Library. And I was born and raised in Harlowton, Montana. I have lived here for almost 42 years. And why did I join the task force? Well, one day my coworker says, it's Pam from the state library. And she asked me if I would like to join. And I thought, she must be digging to the bottom of the barrel. I've only been a director since March of this year. And what brought me to the library, I was a cosmetologist for 22 years, small business owner for 20 years. And I think I had a midlife crisis, 2 years of COVID opinions. I decided that I wanted to change. So here I am at the library, and I learn something new every day. So I think this is a great opportunity to be involved with the state library and with veteran librarians, and just keep learning. So I hope I have something to offer.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tina. And Jennifer.
There we are. Hi, I am Jennifer Ball, and I am the director at Stillwater County Library. I'm an Army brat, so I'm from a lot of places. I moved to Montana about 27 years ago, so I've lived here longer than I've lived anywhere. call it home forever. I agreed to join the task force because I think the certification program is really, really important. And I think like Robin said, I'm a lifelong learner. And so I just enjoy seeing the process and I just see how beneficial. And while I think it's an excellent program, I think everything has room to improve and things need to be updated sometimes. So I think that'll be interesting to see how that morphs. And what brought me to library work, I have a bachelor's in English and I was working for an advocacy agency that had a small special library in it. And I enjoyed the work very much. I knew I was going to get a master's and I was debating between library science, psychology, and another English degree. And another library job landed in my lap. And so that made my decision. And here I am. And so very glad I did it.
That's awesome, Jennifer. So I'm Colette Bartow. I'm the continuing ed coordinator at the State Library. Prior to that, I was at the Office of Public Instruction, first as the school library specialist, and then as the division administrator for the basically the academic programs at the Office of Public Instruction. I was fortunate enough to retire from that career in education earlier this year. And the other part of my work that kind of dovetailed both when I was a school librarian in Manhattan, Montana, and then in my early work at the Office of Public Instruction was the opportunity to work as a state library commissioner and also with various committees, Network Advisory Council. In the late 90s, I worked with the Law Revision Task Force, another task force that is convened from time to time for the state library. And so, in my beginnings in Missoula, Montana, I too, very early on, I think third grade was the first time that I had a job in a library as a student assistant. And so it's just something that has continued to bring me a lot of professional joy and just excitement about learning in general. I too have an English degree. So Jennifer, we have that in common, and it's just amazing how those backgrounds kind of bring us to similar places too. So I'm back in library work, which I'm so thrilled and excited to do, and excited also to be looking at the certification program in particular, as someone who's kind of new back with the state library, and as someone also who was as a library director. Manhattan is a school and community library, and so when the certification program requirements were part of the work that I needed to do, the first time I was actually certified with the state library was back in 2005. So at any rate, kind of a varied background, and just excited to be able to be here as a facilitator for this process. And then also as a participant as well. And so we're going to really tap into everyone's background and expertise and the experiences that you've had with the certification program, and also with the libraries that you work with and work in. So I like to try and answer this question. We're going to have information sharing. We're going to have discussion time, and then with each of the goals that we have for the meetings, we want to have a recommendation that then becomes part of work that gets forwarded for feedback from the Network Advisory Council, as well as kind of the final destination with the State Library Commission, who will be asked to consider and either adopt or not adopt the recommendations that come from this task force for certification of public library directors in particular. So that's kind of the gist of how our meetings will be, hopefully heavy on the discussion. I'll say also that I'll try to be very timely in getting information to you a week prior to each meeting. So before the end of the day today, I will be sending out another worksheet, because I'm a teacher too, so I apparently like worksheets, but kind of a graphic organizer with information for our next meeting next Thursday. And then that information will also be posted to Aspen, our committee page on in that system. So that's kind of the gist of what our meetings will be like. I'll also, I just want to invite everyone to come to the meeting prepared. I'll do my best to have that information to you ahead of time. I want to try to start and end on time because you are all extremely busy and have many responsibilities. Please do also, if you need to take a break, step away, please mute, stop your camera if you're sharing your camera, and, just take a break as you need to. No need to announce or apologize, just do what you need to do. And then also this in the same way, if you need to be absent from a meeting, just shoot me an email and let me know. And then, like I said, that's one of the reasons that we're recording these sessions, so that if for any reason you can't make it, we have a recording that you can watch. With that being said, I just wanted to check in and see if there are any other norms or kind of rules for how we meet that you would like to add to our meeting. Like I said, I'm a teacher, so I practice wait time. I want to give everybody a chance to kind of think, and if something comes to you, don't be afraid to just blurt it out or put it in the chat. And the chat is really important too.
Would you prefer if we raised our hands if we wanted to add something to the discussion, or how did you think that through?
I think, we have a small group, and I think that as we get into the discussion part, raising hands is helpful, and you can do that in the reactions.
Mm-hmm.
So reactions, and then one of the options is to raise hand. So that's a great way. If you've got a thought and somebody's talking, then we can come back to you too. And we can use the chat also. If there's something you can type in, and then we can pick it up too. Okay. A lot more thunder, a lot more lightning. I'm just giving you the blow-by-blow weather account here in the North Helena Valley. So yeah, if that seems good for everybody, if we want to raise hands to be acknowledged and to contribute something, I think that does help, especially in an online meeting, just so that we don't miss someone or skip over anyone. All right, I will type that into the norm slide when we are done. Okay. So this next is an informational piece, just as a reminder. The charge from the state librarian to the task force is just to invite everyone to participate in our activities. We want to review and consider information about needs and priorities. We will have some feedback from core service committees and from the Network Advisory Council as we move forward into the requirements for continuing education. We also want to pay attention to the needs that are expressed by the different people who engage in the certification program. So library directors, trustees, and staff members. And the majority of the way that we're going to do that is through the results of an ongoing survey for feedback that we have. And those are kind of the main data sources that we have to kind of mull things over. We do have some some slight changes that happened with the continuing education, how that's dealt with in the administrative rules of Montana that went into effect. And so I just wanted to mention that, because while the administrative rules have some specific things that they say about how boards of trust and trustees should support continuing education, that isn't the place where the requirements for certification are adopted. The changes to the certification program in terms of goals and requirements are part of policy of the State Library Commission. And so we don't, there's kind of a difference there. Rulemaking is like, this is the law. And then the policies are how we do this, and kind of more of the specifics of implementing those kind of more broad things that are in the administrative rules. This is the big thing for today, and to kind of initiate discussion is around what should the program do and be, and those are the goals. So we're going to dig into that a little bit more. And then, as I said, our end game is to have some recommendations for changes, if any. And I wanted to make sure that I said that as we discuss and look at information that we get through feedback and just the course of discussion about your experiences, it might be possible that no change would be recommended. So, conversely, we might see some things that really could be simplified or clarified, certainly, and we want to be thoughtful about making those recommendations. So any questions or comments on the charge to the task force? Okay. As any thoughts occur to you, again, raise the hand or put the comment in chat, and we will just kind of proceed on from there. Couple more housekeeping things. We're making good time. I'm kind of looking, and hopefully we're on track with everyone. Just kind of the overall timeline. The continuing education requirements and program for certification were really started and officially kind of part of the modern approach to library standards beginning in 1990. So that was the first time that the State Library Commission adopted the requirements for certification. In 1990, it was a completely voluntary program. However, there were no strings attached. There wasn't anything that compelled staff members, trustees, or directors to become certified. It was encouraged, and again, a voluntary program. And I'm kind of, I don't know, maybe it's the librarian background or just that kind of lifelong learning love. But as I did some fairly deep research into the origins of the program, I was really interested to see kind of the difference in how the early program relied on an external committee to review applications. But at the end of the day, the requirements are not that different from the requirements that we have today. It was just a much more time-intensive, paper-based mailing applications and having transcripts and compiling lots of information that then a committee would have to review and then decide whether someone met the requirements and had the right documentation. So as I had said before, every 10 years or so, the program is revisited. And it was really in the late 90s with kind of a second review of the program that the tie for directors to certification and funding was actually instituted. So that was a main shift. And so at that point, directors are required to be certified. And the refined requirements then, kind of up the game, especially for directors at that time and since then. again, just a few tweaks when the last round happened in 2009, and then here we are in 2022. We are right here in kind of the midst of our timeline for this project. The task force is really the workhorse of this process, considering information, relying on your expertise and your experience, and really looking at the program requirements and making sure that we're doing the best that we can to both encourage professional development, that continuing education, and that it's meaningful for the people that we're asking to voluntarily participate, as well as the directors who must be certified. So we are here September to the beginning of November, well, we'll talk a little bit more about the meeting dates and that. But like I said, a lot of this work will happen with this task force, and then next steps happen after that. We have these meetings scheduled and proposed. And so in the spirit of being ready and focused at each time, today we're going to talk about goals. Next time, the intent is to focus on the library administration track requirements, which directors must complete. We'll look at trustee track requirements, which is voluntary for any trustees, as well as library staff, again, completely voluntary. We want to build in time to review and kind of refine any recommendations. I'd like to propose that we hold that Monday, November 21st, the week of Thanksgiving, as kind of a flex date to use as we might need it, or to, I'll put that out there to maybe not have a meeting the week of the Monday of Thanksgiving week, just so it's on the calendar, and we can flex that as we need to, and then coming back together November 30th to finalize recommendations. Just know this is the plan, and if we need to flex or make any adjustments, we'll just deal with those as they come. But just wanted to make sure that everybody had this and kind of saw the plan going forward. Any questions, concerns, any alternate proposals?
Colette,
Yes.
just wanted to ask a question with regard to when we make our final recommendations, what would be the next step there? Who would review it, and then who would make decisions, or would they turn it back to us with more questions, or I don't know how that process would go at all.
No, that's a great question. The intent is that we will have recommendations that then goes to the Network Advisory Council, and get feedback from that advisory group before the recommendations would be finalized and go to the commission for its consideration and action. So that's why we have this timeline kind of extending out into the spring and into the regularly scheduled June meeting for the commission. I will say, with a legislative session starting in January and just a lot of effort and activity that will be, happening over the course of those months. This is a proposed timeline, and we may need to flex as needed, but definitely the Network Advisory Council will have review and feedback. I think it's possible that we would just circle back together if there's any significant feedback or anything significant that happens after we're done with our meeting schedule, just to kind of touch base again. But in general, this is the trajectory that we're on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so with that, it is 2:01. I think we're in a good place time-wise. Does anyone need to take a break, look away, stand up, let the dog out? anything like that? Okay, hearing none. Again, this is kind of an information download for sure this time. The administrative rules of Montana that went into effect in July of this year have this new section that is just about personnel. And the standards are really directed for trustees to be able to make decisions about how continuing education for staff within libraries is constructed and prioritized, and just kind of sets a good bar for what perhaps a minimum standard would be for our public libraries. So there's this, a general statement about sufficient budget for continuing education. So the board refers to the board of trustees for each library. And the ideal is that staff have tools and training that they need to perform their work. We have that reiteration or kind of that expectation that the director is or will be certified within a required time frame. And this is really important. I mean, this points to the responsibility of the commission to adopt a certification program that then expands on these general statements about what and I just pulled out the parts about continuing education or certification from the new rule. And then it also preserves, again, that minimum standards for communities of over 25,000 people who that director should have a Master of Library Science or equivalent graduate degree. So that was the change. Those are the changes that relate to continuing education that went into effect July of this year. And they, I think, have a couple of things that are important as we think about goals. That training is important, that there's a pathway for certification for directors because that is a requirement in the rule, and then recognizing that the professional degree as an important part of the preparation and qualification for the directors of our largest public libraries. So any questions or thoughts about what those rules say as we get started?
I don't know if you
Did you
saw
s-
Robin's comment
Yes.
in the
I was wondering if you saw that.
in the chat about funding for CE. I would just mention that a lot of the federations they have a program in their plan of service that some of their federation money does go towards CE.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's not all. I think they all do have that. I don't know how much money they all allocate to it, but it is something that they do. Mostly it's to make sure that the libraries have a way to get to the next library conference, the Montana Library Association conference. So they get a lot of CE there, but I think that's at least one part of it. But I think it's not a bad idea to look for other funding sources for CE also. Right,
and also are a lot of the continuing ed classes, are they Zoom? Are they online? I guess that's another question that I had also about that.
I think it's a really good question. And definitely over the last 3 years, there is a lot more that is available either through subscriptions that the state library pays for through the federal, the Library Services Technology Act funds. And so there is a lot available online in terms of library learning. But I think we're kind of in a reset in terms of the in-person continuing education, certainly the Library Association with the conferences, the annual conferences that they that they do each year. It was really interesting to go to Missoula. Pam and I, and Robin too, and Carmen, Miranda, you were there too. Yeah. Just what it's like to come back as in-person convenings, and really recognizing the expense, travel expense, time away from libraries and that. And so I think there are a lot of opportunities, and many of them are free of charge, but I think that's a real challenge with for directors and for trustees to be looking at how do they adequately support continuing education. And I think that is, I think it's something to really keep in mind as we think about requirements for directors specifically, because that is required for those folks. Yes, Jennifer, thank you. And in fact, I did my, I got recertified in the library staff track by just relying on the Web Junction and United for Libraries and some of the other online learning opportunities that I had. And all of the things that I was able to do were free of charge. I'm also, that was one question I didn't ask in the survey about boards requiring all staff to be certified. I'm not sure how common that is across the state, so that I'd be curious to know how many libraries do require all staff to be certified. Okay, I'm going to actually forward to this next slide. And we have this kind of laundry list of the current program goals. So these are the goals that are in the current certification manual, and were part of the outcome of the update that was made back in 2009. So we do have feedback. And if you were able to kind of peer into the little tiny slides or look at the slide deck to see some of those responses, we'll kind of look at these more in depth individually. But the idea of promoting continuing education, kind of coming up to date with some of the professional certifications from national and regional organizations was important at that time. The idea of recognition is kind of an interesting one that I think we'll dig into more as we look at the requirements. And so at any rate, these are what the current program goals are. And so of the responses that we got from the feedback survey, and I did update this as of this morning. There were 2 more responses from the packet that I sent to you last week, and I think it's a nice mix of directors. I'm so grateful when trustees are able to respond and give their view, because they're so important to the success of continuing education in the libraries, library staff. And then others, those other 3 others are state library staff. I love the responses here. We have a lot of interest, not just from directors, but when we see the distribution of the folks who responded to this survey, the majority are currently certified through the CE program. 16 were not. And I think one of the things I'm paying attention to is the ones who don't know. So that's just more of a note for me to kind of reach out and make sure that we're communicating well, especially as changes are coming down the pike for what the certification program is and how people can can get engaged with it. So that's kind of who the baseline. And I did ask this question, how important it is, and a 4.17 out of 5 is a fairly good rating across those different types of people who responded. So it is important. And so then when we start to look at the goals, and this is a little bit of a strange type of graph. So the options in the responses for each of those items was someone could choose to keep the goal as it was, to make some change, to discard or get rid of that goal, or that they had no opinion. And so I'll just kind of give my quick interpretation of the bar graph that shows this distribution. So promoting continuing education, its impact for quality library services. I think there's a fairly strong response that says to keep it as it is, that particular goal, with perhaps some slight changes, and we can look at the specifics on that. This last bar, no one said to discard it, but then there were just 2 responses, I believe, that had no opinion on the goal. I think this next one is a little bit more interesting in terms of the fact that folks didn't have an opinion or said to discard. It's represented a little bit more strongly in the responses, and that has to do with bringing the program into line with other national or regional certification programs. So I just wanted to pause, having talked about that, and just see if there were any other questions or impressions that you had based on the responses to the first 2 goals.
I guess I can talk faster than I can type, but
Right ahead.
No, I started typing, but so I think with the second one, maybe the ambiguity is a little bit more about where people might not have known what was meant by programs such as Western Council. I mean, everybody knows what ALA is, but actually I don't know what Western Council is, and I'm sorry I didn't have time to look into it to see what it might entail and how it's different. So I think maybe that's what's reflected in that they have no opinion because maybe they don't know what it is. I don't know. That's just my impression on that.
Yeah, the comments really bear that out. Don't know what, especially Western Council, don't know what that is, and just really didn't feel that it was important.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Tina.
I do believe I was a no opinion on that. And my reason for that is because I'm new. I don't have anything to compare it to. So I don't know if maybe that's in line with other people's responses, but for me personally, I know that I was a no opinion on that. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I would say is that, in 2009, when this goal was adopted, the Western Council of the State Librarians, so there's a national organization that Jenny belongs to. It's the Chief Officers of State Library Agencies. There is a regional subgroup of that called the Western Council. And at the time, that Western Council was actually more active than the National COSLA group. And they had published certification competencies. So I'm thinking, if there are standards for certified public accountants, the Western Council was kind of publishing the same sorts of standards for a license for librarians. And the short end to that story is that that project was actually abandoned about 2 years after, in about 2011. And so that those competencies don't really exist anymore. Although the American Library Association recently, this year, actually published updated competencies. And so that's something that I think as we look at goals a little bit more closely, the goals of the program itself, I think that's something to weigh. How important are competencies that are created by professional organizations? Like, how much can we rely on those, or need to look at those more specifically for requirements for directors, staff, and trustees? So it's an interesting thing to think about. It was definitely kind of a topic of the day back in 2009. And what I would say is that it's maybe less of a topic from the standpoint of individual states developing certification programs for libraries. Okay, so I'm going to go to this next goal, which is about recognition for librarians. And that particular goal had 3 components. So improving how certified librarians are recognized, differentiating between minimum and extraordinary efforts, and then making the program certificate a useful tool for hiring and promotion. So that's a lot that I would say. It's a lot of kind of different ways of looking at recognition for librarians. And so we have, I think, my interpretation, and again, I'm going to say what my interpretation is and welcome and encourage other interpretations and other questions. You know how it is when you kind of look at things too much and you can kind of get lost in it. So really hoping for some fresh eyes and other thoughts on this. But, you know, recognition for certified librarians is something that seems important. And it was slightly less important to be able to differentiate between minimum and extraordinary effort. And then I think definitely with 58 responses, given that that's the size of the group that we're looking at here, hiring and promotion is something that is maybe a little bit more specific, but definitely important.
So sorry, I should have
Yeah,
raised
no,
my
no.
hand electronically. So as far as, and I think I might have put that in the comment when I did the survey, making the program certificate a useful tool for hiring and promotion. I think that's incredibly difficult because every city, I mean, the city of Bozeman, we have an HR department, right? So, and they, I mean, I don't know if they really care if I'm certified or not. So and with smaller cities, that might be something totally different than a bigger city, right? So that part of it to me was, and I don't know how to change it or whatever. I don't have any opinion on that as of right now, but I just think, I don't know how useful of a tool it is for hiring and promotion, because it's so different. I mean, Montana is so different with very small towns and very small libraries and medium-sized libraries and very large libraries. So I don't know, but so that's one thing that I was thinking about as far as the third point right there.
Mm-hmm.
And to the first one, improving how certified librarians are recognized. I think it's important to do that because you worked incredibly hard over a span of, I don't know, 2 to 4 years probably to achieve that. So it should be something that, I don't know, that it's known to people. I mean, obviously it's known to my director and my assistant director that I just recently recertified. But in the past, we've had a recognition during MLA or in the MLA booklet. I mean, there's no more booklet right now. So, and that was kind of nice. You know, there was like a listing of these librarians recertified in the last year or whatever. So it was kind of nice. But yeah, so I think something could be changed on the first point as well.
Yeah, I think some kind of recognition might even give people an incentive to go to get certification if it's not required anywhere else. But you know, some people like the little recognition kind of thing. And if, like you said, I forgot, Carmen, that they used to put that in the MLA program thing about recently certified. So, you know, maybe there could be some kind of announcement at some point, you know, every quarter or something, just to remind people that it's out there and give people a reason to want to pursue a little bit more.
I just want to make a comment on the comparison with those types of, I don't know if you call it credentialing certification, but in when I started out, being board certified was the capstone project on your educational process, and you couldn't even take the test for 2 years after you'd finished and we'd been out working. And then it became a requirement. Basically, the hospitals wouldn't take you if you weren't board certified within 4 years. And it was very, it used to be something that was just an extra, you know, and we were all proud to compete to get it. But it became that you couldn't work if you can't work at Kalispell's hospital if you don't have board certification within X number of years now. Whereas when I came, it was, you know, they just like to brag that they had so many guys that had their boards. So there's a slippery slope. And I think that there was also some watering down and pressuring on the certification people because they knew that it was no longer a capstone project. And if you failed somebody, so that's just in the back of my mind when I, you know, look at those things for hiring and promotions. Not that, I mean, I can't compare the two as far as that, you know, the how it's decided, but it's something to think about when you do that.
Yeah, other thoughts,
So I have on number one, improving how certified librarians are recognized. I think that would be, for my staff who have completed the certification, I think that would have been very rewarding to them, not just to get a certificate, but to have some other kind of recognition. Myself, I don't care because I don't like to be in the spotlight, but I'm different than a lot of people. I'm curious what the differentiating between minimum and extraordinary efforts, what that would look like and how we determine what those are. I'd like to know a lot more about that. And I agree with Carmen, you can't use the certification program as a way to hire, not here. We just don't have enough. We don't have enough librarians in the state to be able to do that. But for us, it is a great way to set goals for them to learn their jobs better and for raises and things like that. We don't have a whole lot of opportunity for promotion here because we're small, but definitely helps as far as raises go. So, yeah.
taking lots of notes. I think if you're okay, I will, and sorry, I'm like moving things around on all my different screens. So sorry if I'm a little distracting with moving around too much. So one of the goals was to develop a track for public library directors that requires continuing education. Check the box. That didn't change in 2009, and that had been in place since the 90s. But this question of, you know, is more meaningful for what they need to know. there's either no opinion or there's some significance. And so I really keyed into that word meaningful. So where public library directors are required to be certified, is this goal sufficient to help point towards what might be most meaningful for those directors? So just any thoughts or kind of reactions to this goal?
So I am not a library director, but what I was thinking was, I mean, I definitely think we should keep the first point as is, but the second part is more meaningful for what they need to know. I mean, I think I have been certified in the library administration track for a number of years. Just because. So, but none of the classes I ever took, which, I mean, I guess I could have, maybe, I don't know, ever had to do like with budgeting or with, I don't know, staffing or how to adequately staff a library or anything, any of that sort. So maybe that's what could be added into it. And I mean, maybe there were budgeting classes that I just wasn't aware of or something, I'm not sure, but that's something that popped into my head. Especially, it seems like there's a lot of new library directors in the state of Montana, and maybe some don't know that or don't have any experience with that. I don't know.
Yeah, I would like to hear from both of the library directors on here, not to put you all on the spot, but Tina is really new. That's one reason I kind of, was encouraging her to join this, because I wanted to get some fresh eyes into the whole, what's it like to be a new director and try to become certified. And Jennifer's rather new also. So, not to, if you have comments on this, of what would be useful as a new director, instead of just, some of the basic things that we offer out there. But like Carmen said, I think, budgeting and management and supervising, that kind of thing could be helpful for a new director. And we don't really have anything directed at that. So any thoughts from either of you?
Staffing, please. Staff management. I have a great staff, but staff can be very hard on directors. It's a lot of take and not a whole lot of give in a lot of areas. And it's like, sometimes you want to say, hey, I'm a person too. So just learning to navigate that and more than just that. But that's probably my biggest issue, with just the constant take and trying to balance getting my own job done with keeping in touch with everybody and making sure everybody has what they need. And delegation. Budgeting would have been nice to have more experience in that prior to my first year. I was fortunate because my first certification I got with my master's degree. So that gave me, then I'll be 3 years in December here, and I've already gotten my second certification. So I was fortunate that I had a little time but yeah, had to jump right into budgeting and all sorts of things. And I hadn't done it to the degree I do it here. And so it was a great learning experience. And it would have been nice to have a little more knowledge going into that. And marketing is the other thing. We don't have enough information on how to market our libraries properly, and social media platforms and just all the avenues we can use. There's a lot of that behind the scenes kind of things that would be very helpful.
Yeah, and I'm thinking I have a to-do to kind of package and send to you the responses that we got around the important topics that the continuing education program could include. And so you're really hitting on those high priorities, especially for directors and anyone who serves as an administrator within a library. And so budgeting, human resources, and that. And so those of you who have been able to attend the the workshop that Tracy Cook has put on. Dave was with us in Missoula, and I think Jennifer and Pam and Tina were all in Lewistown last week. And then Miranda, I'm not sure if you went to the session in Sydney last week, but you know, that just those are areas and content or topics that are important for the state library to deliver more support for. So yeah, I think that really gets to the what's meaningful for what folks needs to know. And then kind of looking forward, you know, does the way that this goal state the importance of a track for public library directors help get us to a place that really indicates what needs to be part of the requirement, and then what needs to be offered in order to make it possible for people to actually achieve that requirement. Okay, I'm gonna go on to this kind of compilation of the last 4 elements that are in the program goals for 2000 from the current CE program. And you know, the develop a voluntary track for trustees and boards, that it was developed. It's actually been in place since the 1990 version of the CE program. The need for clarifying ambiguous sections of the program, I think that kind of goes with any sort of refresh or relook at a program like this. Definitely want to do that. The tracking system, so we have Aspen, and I know it's a love-hate relationship with the system or the program itself. But at the time that this goal was put in place, Aspen hadn't really been created, and they were still dealing with paper forms that presenters would have to sign, and individuals who wanted to be certified would have to make sure that they have the piece of paper. I had to do that, you know, this part of the process as a public library director, you know, back in the day. And so what I would say is that, you know, there is a system, and that system will be informed. Changes to that system will be informed as we talk about and make suggestions for changes to the requirements. So I'd like to say, like, the first 3 things are kind of check the box. You know, those things are in place. We're going to look at the requirements for trustee track. I think what will come out of this process is clarification of the program. And the third one, you know, Aspen will be improved in response to the outcome of our process to update the CE program. The last one, with library administrators to be more involved with continuing education needs of staff. I think that's a really, that's a big thing. It is something that I think is a huge responsibility that's just inherent to the job of the library director. It's in the CE program process that directors will verify certification records prior to the certificate being issued by the state library. And so you know, I think that's really an important value of what do we ask of library administrators in terms of you know, that verification process and that. So I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts or any ideas were around kind of these 4 things as a whole, but any thoughts about also maintaining these as specific goals of the program?
I personally would love to see, excuse me, trustees being required to have to get their certification. I'm fortunate that most of mine do, but I think it makes a big difference in understanding, helping us work together better and understanding, you know, what are the trustee roles, what are the director's roles, and so we don't have that overstepping of boundaries, and just becoming more educated about libraries in general.
I think it's interesting, Jennifer, you said your board requires all your staff to be certified. And I thought, well, that's great. But so does your board require itself to be certified? And if other libraries could do the same thing, if they're requiring staff, well, wouldn't they require themselves? I personally would like to see, requiring at least a majority of the board to be certified, if not all of them. I think that'd be a great thing. The other comment I have is, we do ask administrators to verify credits, but honestly, I don't know how accurately or closely they look at that. For example, if Carmen goes to her director and says, here, I've got all these credits, is she going to ask you, oh yeah, were you at this program last week or last year or 2 years ago? I mean, I kind of feel like they don't look that closely and it's more just a rubber stamp on this, but I also think it probably at least helps keep them aware of what their staff is doing. But I'm not so sure about how to make that better. I feel like there's a little gap in there.
Miranda, you have your hand up.
Going off of what Pam was saying, I think that's also a lot of the difference between small libraries and large libraries, because like there's 4 of us. Kelly knows what we do. So she's like, yeah, I know you went to that, or yeah, you didn't go to that, like it's a lot easier for her. And again, with a small library, like making trustees do a certification track, I don't think ours would. They just, don't have the time, we have trainings with them during board meetings sometimes, but to actually do enough to fill out a certification track, I think would be difficult.
So I'm hoping that we're kind of percolating some ideas on clarified goals, and we're at 2:38 according to my my computer clock here. So I want to kind of shift gears after this general look and general discussion of the feedback that we got about the current goals, and kind of use this model. I know those of you who have been in different trainings, and as an educator, SMART goals are the thing, and that's a model of really formulating goals that can be accomplished. And so I made up, it's not an acronym. I'm not going to try and make it an acronym, but as kind of a guiding principles to think about what recommendations for new goals for the program. I would like to have us think about having a very clear few goals that are actionable and measurable as well. And I think that's something as a part of my reaction to the existing goals. And again, time bound, from the experience and kind of the time that those goals were created, and knowing that there's a need for having the goals be meaningful, but also clear, and help to really set the stage for the state library to know its role in helping our participants be successful in achieving certification, but then also that really important step of individuals having professional goals and then having the support to be able to achieve those through continuing education. So this is, like I said, I'm not going to make it an acronym because I think it would just be an awful one, but thinking about few, clear, actionable, and measurable goals is I think an important part of what we need to do. So I kind of have this this placeholder. I'm actually going to shift to the worksheet document that I made, just to kind of give us a little bit different view of the goals themselves. See here, make sure I've got everything.
Yes, from reading the goals and the I mean, everything in that document, it was overwhelming. I cannot imagine, and I know that at the time, I'm sure it was, but it's very repetitive, and yeah, it was confusing.
Thank you for that, Robin. Yeah, and can we have fewer goals? Can they be more explicit, unambiguous, and understandable? And then in terms of actionable, I just wanted to make sure that I kind of gone back to the questions that I put here. Action on the part of the state library. There are parameters that we have around what we can do in terms of existing resources, whether that's personnel or program funding, and the systems. We talked a little bit about Aspen being the system that we use to manage the information for certification and continuing ed. And I think even more importantly, can directors, staff, and trustees actually access the program? And I'm somebody who is really interested in knowing what it means to be successful. What are the goals or measurable outcomes that we can put in place that are very clear for the program and certification, and that we all know what success looks like for both the state library in supporting the program, and that the program participants get that recognition, that they have meaningful training, that they have meaningful experiences that helps them grow as professionals. So like I said, if this is a worksheet, otherwise glamorously known as a graphic organizer, intended for you to take notes. And so just put the original goals from 1990, the kind of slight changes that were put in place in 1999, and then the current goals. And what I did, and what I'd encourage you to do between now and our next time, just kind of looking at the time that we have left, I kind of prioritized or highlighted things that I wanted to think about a little bit more, in terms of having few clear, actionable, measurable goals for the continuing education program. So again, I'm kind of poisoning the pool here by sharing what my highlight is on this page, but I wanted to kind of stop and just have that more general discussion about what do you think is important to preserve in terms of goals with these criteria in mind.
So did you have any thought on how to, or how many goals you might want to have, or we might want to have, or is that up for discussion, I guess?
I think it's up for discussion, and I will, like I said, I already poisoned the pool with showing you where I highlighted this one thing, but I think it's worth that discussion. How many is the right number? And probably even more importantly, what are those important values of the program that we can state as actionable, measurable, clear goals of the program. So if it's 3, if it's 4, I think that's kind of up for grabs. But just from your impressions, like what are the most important things that should be goals of the continuing education and certification program?
And you want that answer next time, not right now?
I think, yes, I think next time, and then certainly by the end of our process. I like to be prepared and have kind of things kind of pulled together, but this is a group that I really respect, and I didn't want to over construct how we did this discussion of, what are the goals and what are too few or too many in that. So any ideas are wonderful, and I can take notes if we have some initial ideas right now in the next 7 minutes.
I mean, the last one, the clarify ambiguous sections of the program. I mean, I think that's maybe what we're working on right now, right? So I don't know if that's actually a goal that we need to keep in writing, or if that's something that can go away, because it's a little bit, to me, that was very confusing. And then in your little graph where it said keep the same or change or drop, well, what are we keeping the same? We're clarifying ambiguous sections, or so that was a little bit strange. So I think this is what we're working on, right? So that need to be a goal. That's what I think, but just right at the top of my head, but I generally need to think about things. So this is all I'm going to say about that.
I think that's great.
If I could make a comment, as far as trying to channel people into different functional categories, that they learn a more in-depth understanding of whatever category they're picking that they want to specialize in or just get their certification in. I did my certification this past year, but I felt a little bit just kind of picking a fruit salad as far as which courses I should take, and a little more guidance for each categorization, just like you pick in an undergraduate course guide, would be helpful as kind of a goal to try to put it into more tightly constructed categories so that you could be the expert in something or feel like you had at least an in-depth period of knowledge that you could share with other trustees, other directors, and combine that with a kind of a directory. I would like to see that with the trustees around the state to be able to take advantage of those people that have been around a while and are extra knowledgeable in certain areas that I'd be able to tap into and fire off an email or have a blog page or whatever that we trustees could use to help us find the best courses for a specific knowledge category. Anyway, that's something I'd like to see. They have that in some of the courses I've been used to over the years, and it was helpful. I don't know about pre-test, post-test to help you actually focus the mind a little bit on what you want to learn. I'm used to that too, but all those things can be incorporated if we want them.
Hopefully I'm capturing a little bit of the essence of what you're talking about with these notes here. Other kind of top of the mind initial reactions, we need to keep this, or this just can go away.
I mean, on the second page where we have the 3 different choices about the making the program certificate a useful tool for hiring and promotion, we already talked about that might be hard to accomplish. I'm not saying we need to delete it right away or anything, but that's something to talk about. And then we've also already mentioned the differentiating between minimum and extraordinary efforts. I mean, that's very subjective, I think. I don't know. Or what does it mean? Like what, so either you have a standard, like, so here's a certification and you need to have 40, right? 40 CE credits. well, if you have 40, is that just a minimum amount, or is this, I mean, that's what we're asking for, right? So then why would this be minimum and having 50 would be extraordinary? I don't know. So that's kind of where I was struggling with as far as that particular point. Like what, it's, I think it's very subjective, and I don't think that's it's not helpful.
Mhm, mhm.
I agree with Carmen on that too. It's like, if
I
you got
agree
to
also.
whatever number is required, well, you have it. And
Right.
why? I mean, sometimes because you go to more programs, you do end up with more points in a category, but has it really gotten you anything on there? Or I don't know. I kind of think you have a number and it's a yes or a no thing. It's not a level of something. And also for the hiring and promotion idea, I'm wondering, can we, even though most towns and cities have their own HR and that's how they hire people, but could it be used perhaps like, you get the veterans preference kind of thing. If someone has some kind of Montana state certification, could that give them a preference when hiring? Just as a thought to throw that out there.
Then it would need to be, well, the whole program would need to be well known about. Otherwise there'd be some people with an advantage and some not. And the effort, I mean, who is the sorry, my granddaughter is playing the xylophone. It's okay. Anyway, it's who is, like was said, it's so subjective. Who can tell who's putting in the effort? That to me is just such a subjective word.
Yeah, just because I watched another webinar and got extra points, was that any effort on my part to watch another webinar and get more points? I can see like it's not a lot of effort to do that sometimes. So I agree.
These are big questions. What is, and that's why I come back to what is meaningful recognition. And then there is the reality, especially for directors, with their requirement that there are consequences, potential consequences if a director doesn't meet the requirements for certification. So there's kind of, I'm not going to call it a fine line, but there's a really important line to draw between what is meaningful and important and what is nice to have and how you could actually use that certification. We just have a couple of more minutes. We haven't had any public join us, so well, I'll check in on the participant list again just to see if somebody did join us. But just in contrast, and a kind of to preview next time, I did an informal poll of all of about half of the state libraries and states, and to ask them about the requirements that they would have for certification. And one of the interesting things that I learned that I wasn't aware of before is that in the state of Washington, in order to be eligible for employment in a public library, all staff members must be certified through their state certification program. So that's an example of, from a state level, and funding, follows and is there to support that. But it is a requirement for anyone who wants to work in a public library that they're certified. On the other end of the spectrum, there are many states that don't require certification and don't have certification programs at all. So I just kind of wanted you to be aware of that spectrum of possibility, and to kind of have that be something we think about. For Montana, it has been important. And not just since 1990, there's actually the certification of public library directors, until the State Library Commission was established, was actually done by the Library Association. And there are some state library associations that do have that role still, definitely on a more voluntary and informal basis. But all of it comes back to this idea that in public service, the professional preparation of library directors in particular has been a value since, before our grandparents even were public library patrons. So that's kind of a thought I wanted to leave us with as we're moving on to the next parts of our day. And I just wanted to, I will share back these notes with you and just encourage you to take a look at what other thoughts you might have around the goals. I would also ask that if you have some preliminary drafts of goals or a proposal, just email those to me and I can put that together and have that ready to share out with the whole group by next time. And that was something I didn't put on the slide, but definitely feel free to just reach out by email as you think about something, as you have a proposal. I'll coordinate and kind of collate all the information and be able to share it back out with the team as a whole. It's a lot to kind of think about and consider in this time period that we have. And so again, just reach out to me as that, 3 o'clock in the morning light bulb goes on. Just send me that email and I'll take a look at it when I get up in the morning. But I know that sometimes inspiration comes at the time that's not during the meeting. So definitely reach out to me that way. Let's see here. I want to make sure that, let's see here. I'm gonna kind of do our wrap up of slides here.
I had one last thought on your recognition goal, that it would be really nice if we could have recognition kind of more consistent across everywhere. Some libraries give their certified staff, a bonus, but not all libraries can do that, but that's a wonderful thing and there's an incentive. But, I think if we're going to have something like that, it does need to be universal. Like, I'm not going to go work in Bozeman because they're not going to give me a gift card because I'm certified, but I'll go work in Missoula because they'll give me $50 or something like that. So I think we need to have it universal if we can come up with some recognition like that.
I think that could be a good subcommittee as we're getting ready to implement the new program. What good ideas do we have that libraries can implement that improves recognition? So with about 30 seconds left, hopefully we have connected. Hopefully we are oriented to our charge. Hopefully you have had access to resources and information that begins to get those juices flowing. We have not completed a first draft of the program goal recommendations, but I do believe that we have some good thoughts going and some notes, and just know that as we progress through our meeting cycle, that really, by that last meeting in November, that is when we will actually complete and have a final recommendation. So I feel really good that we've got things marinating and kind of percolating. And our next discussion about the director's requirements is going to be well informed by this discussion and the other thoughts that you might have between now and then. With that, I'm going to add meeting information to Aspen, to our meeting, our committee pages, and those will show up automatically. If you ever get lost and need to find something that we put together, the meeting recording and the other resources will be in Aspen as well. The event resources show up kind of at the bottom, and then the link, the online meeting URL, will turn into the meeting recording. With that, we will convene again next Thursday at 1:30 with a focus on library administration. Please reach out if you have thoughts and ideas. We are not, even though we're doing public comment, we are not, bound by some of those rules where we can't talk to each other and have independent conversations. So I just really encourage you to do that, and we will work through our charge. Okay, with that, I'm gonna stop the recording. Come on.